Welcome everybody to the Keys to Wisdom channel. So in this video here, I'm going to cover exactly what it says here. Lychrel numbers and the real Mount Zion. So the first thing I got up here is the list of the Lychrel candidates list numbers. And I've gone over these in other videos, but we'll talk about them a little bit here again. All right, there's a 3,761 year bridge that has crossed over from the AD to the AM calendars, the Roman to the Hebrew calendars, 6 different times. First time it occurred was 1497 AD, 3,761 year bridge to 5,258 AM. Second time, 1587 AD, 5348 AM. Third time, 1677 AD, 5438 AM. Fourth time, 1767 AD, 5528 AM. Fifth time, 1857 AD, 5618 AM. And the sixth time, 1947 AD and 5708 AM. So these are the Lychrel numbers. In the AD calendar, they have come up for the second time because they've all come up for the first time in the AM calendar, and there's been 26 instances, with the last one being 1997, which is an A to Z thing, and the next instance will not be until the year 2494, and the seventh time that the 3,761 year bridge will apply is 2496 AD and 6257 AM. Anno Monday, Anno Domini. Now, the Lychrel numbers candidates list. Alright, here is that seventh instance, 2496. In the reverse, 6942, 9438. All 6 of the AD instances, left and rights, are all 9438s. The 6 instances in the AM calendar across the 3,761 year bridge are all 13783s. Now, Abraham is also involved here. This bridge is what links Abraham in the AM calendar, Abraham's conception, 1947 AM, Abraham's birth, 1948 AM, to Israel in the AD calendar, the conception of Israel, 1947 AD, and the birth of Israel, 1948 AM. So, alright, that's what we had. The 6th instance. This is also related to the book of Genesis in the 6 days of creation. right? 1947, left and right, 9438. Abraham, which is what the whole deal is all about, left and right, 1948 plus 84, 91 equals 10439, 1948. Let me put our key on there, and that now is an anagram of 1948, 1948, and the key one 3783 5708 plus 8075 equals 13783. So that is basic breakdown of the Lychrel numbers candidates list. Let me just see if I have something else. Let's go back, go through it again. The Lychrel numbers candidates list. Abraham, so that's 1947 and 1948. The key now is showing 1948, 1948. That's the connection. 1948, birth of Abraham, AM, Anno Monday. 1948, birth of Israel, Anno Domini, and Israel. 1497, 1, 5708. That is the first one, but it's also the sixth one, 1947, 5708. So that is the basic deal on that. Now we're going to start off here, right? A neutral, B neutral, no ionization. C ion, -9 on the bottom, or +9 on the bottom, +9 on the right here. It stays C ion, charged, the word, all the way to the letter Y. C, D, E. E is where the Z ion charge begins. C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. At Y, it is still charged Sion, and the word has been charged Sion from C to Y. And the very first time that it's charged to Zion or E-ion is at Z. That is why these things are called Sion and Zion. They are real, literal, but they're two different things. And that is what has made everything cyclical. Now from there, the word repeats, except it does not go through the A and the B, because everything is charged. A and B is the neutral state. Everything began as until it fell, which is at the C ion. So when the word becomes cyclical and begins to repeat, It starts out the second time through at the sea. And this 1200 is the origin of our days. And that is the first opportunity where things could have gone back to the neutral state, right? That's how it could have went, right? It could not have went A, B, C, but it could have went C, A, B, and we could have took the cab back to neutral state, but we didn't. Not Washington, D.C. occurred. Right, Washington, D.C., not Washington, D.C. No tie. No tie. And C ion again takes charge. So from there, there's a struggle that goes back and forth. The real pole shifts. Right? The C pole is in charge all the way from C to Y. Then there is a pole shift at Z. The opposing pole now is in charge. Then there was an opportunity for neutrality, and take the cab back to 1212, neutrality, where everything began. It didn't happen, and throughout the word keeps repeating over and over. Everything is cyclical, right? Just like our days repeat, our years repeat, great year repeats, and there's a struggle back and forth, pole shift after pole shift after pole shift, and those manifestations from the word, which everything was built from, right, have a physical manifestation here on earth. The poles shift back and forth. The sun, poles shift back and forth in the cyclical nature, just like the word does. But because of this setup here, right, that where the script cuts off, and rather than going into the 5 trees of paradise that would finish the second script, which is C to 31, right, an attempt was made to forgive everything, heal everything, and return it back to neutrality where it began. And because all these 5 characters are all charged Zion, instead of going into them, they went into, it turned back around to C. So basically, the offering of an olive branch. And not Washington, D.C., it didn't wind up working out. The equivalents of these are VE 90/9. See, that's what would have happened if it continued into what are the 5 trees of paradise that Jesus covers within the Gospel of Thomas. Right, and rather than the olive branch being offered and the attempt to return everything back to neutrality from where it all began before it fell, right? And it's going right back to the character that made it fall, the sea, the serpent, the first instance where there's actually air blockage, lying, murdering, where everything rotten originates, right? It went there, right? These two wrongs don't make a right. And that's how everything became cyclical. And the battle goes back and forth. So 28 would be we, 94, 49. 29 would be IT or EX, 98, 89. 30 would be a JT, 93, 39. Okay. And 31 would be KT, 97, 79, and that would be the complete second script, C to 31, right? The basis of Genesis chapter 1, Genesis 1, 1 to 31. Full month, 1 to 31. Right? We have some things going on within our months also that speak of this, right? Our months will end on 31, 30, 29, and 28. There is no month that ends on 27. And the alphabet is 1 to 26. Right? February will end on 28. Leap years, 29. The other months all end on 30 and 31. And the year ends on a 31. Every year, December 31st. Right? Then it starts over at 1-1. Right? So we have an alphabetic component to all of our months, the way that they're set up, and we have information within the setup of the calendar that speaks about this, right? What's there, what's used, 28, 29, 30, 31, what's not, the 27, right? What's used within the word, the alphabet, 1 to 26 is used, right? What is not used whatsoever, right? We've got the alphabet 1 to 26, and the months have alphabets 1 to 28, 1 to 29, 1 to 30, 1 to 31. No such thing as 1 to 27. That is a big deal. So, but because of the characters used, and we could take the A and the B off, right? They're neutral, so they don't affect it, right? There is a charge to the Zion, E-ion side of 9 more on the characters that use. So while it started out with C-ion, Sion charge for a long time, C all the way to Y, every time through it keeps getting reduced by 9. This will result eventually at a point where there will be 2 final times of possible neutrality, and once we go beyond those, no longer will the repeating cyclical pattern ever allow for a chance at neutrality or a C-ion, Sion charge of the word again, if the pattern that we are in holds. It is an eternal Mount Zion that the word becomes. And I'm going to show you that here Let me get it to copy and paste where that occurs. You can go through the list, through the repeating word, and see all of the different instances where possible neutrality comes up and where the last ones are, and how once you go beyond that, it can never occur again. So, alright, I got that. So I'm just going to take this out here and I'm going to paste in to the last, last time. 264 12 264 12. So we have the first time where the A and the B applied. That's where we originated from. Everything became charged, and once it became cyclical, we couldn't pass back through there, right? Everything is charged. It's plus and minus, more and less, electrons and protons, right? It's basic. This is also where the mass deal comes in, right? Everything was neutrons, neutral, and then things fell and hydrogen came into existence. So this is the very last time, and the second to last time here is at the end. So this would be 1 trip, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22. So it's on the 23rd time. 26247, 26247. O P Q, which is the word pole, POLE, to the very last time. Now this is an interesting thing here. Got to kind of type a little bit slow. Oh, what can I use? I'll use this star. So what I'm trying to say here is that 12 times 22 equals 264. So when we're being shown this here, right, we got 23 instances. One time the 1212, the AB is in it. That's what's on the right hand side, the 1212. Right? And then 22 times there is no AB in it. That is the 264, 264. So when we're seeing this out here mathematically, we're being shown what is not there, which is the 22 other times of the AB here that do not go at the beginning of this. Now, this also has a context of 57, 48, 49 to it, which would be the year 1988. And I definitely have some things about this and some ideas about this, but I'm not going to go into them at this time. But here, after this OPQ, the very last time, is where the Mount Zion begins. That's the letter R. Now, no matter what, you continue this pattern around, it is 26475, 26448, so it's 27. The charge is plus 27 Zion at this point. So when the potentially eternal Mount Zion begins, right, we have here in the center key is 1948-47, which is the same deal as the Lychrel numbers candidates list at the sixth day, the sixth instance, when the 3,761 year bridge applies, right? 3,761 BC is 1 a.m. Anno Mundi. And then 3,761 a.m. Anno Mundi is 1 BC and also 1 AD. That is the setup of the two calendars, Roman and Hebrew. 3,761 years. So that the 1 and 3761 line up 3 times. And here, 1948 and 47 are the AM year 5708. Same 3,761 year bridge, right? It's 1947 plus 3,761 equals 5708. 1948 plus 3760 equals 5708. And that's how all of the calendar systems work back and forth. And there's an opposite procedure of minus 3761 minus 3760, because each let's do it with 1948. Let's say 1948 is 5708 and 5709. So it's 1948 plus 3760 is 5708 when it begins, 1948. 1948 plus 3761 is 5709 when it ends, right? 5708 begins in 1947 and ends in 1948. So it's a 5708 minus 3761 equals 1947. Minus 3760 equals 1948. 1948 plus 3760, 5708. That's how they operate in threes. So what this is showing us here, this 1948-47, which again is both Abraham Anno Mundi, the conception of Abraham, 1947 a.m. The birth of Abraham, 1948 a.m. The conception of the modern nation of Israel, 1947 A.D. The birth of the modern nation of Israel, 1948 a.m. Right here where the potentially eternal Mount Zion begins. And as you go longer, all Mount Zion does is rise and rise and rise and rise. There is no longer any potential to establish neutrality or to ever establish the C ion charge again. And that's why Mount Zion is called the Eternal Mount Zion. They have all kinds of things within the stories about the real word, but this is the real deal basis of all of those stories. And the word is the basis of why our calendars are the way they are. The Lychrel numbers, right? That's written by God, right? Man can't influence those numbers. He can only read them, right? But that's what everything is based on, and that's how it's all tied together. That's how Roman and Hebrew time is tied together, and it's based on the Lychrel numbers candidates list, and here it is based on the word and these values, right? These values. Whenever you calculate this out, right? We're calculating it right now in the year 2025, but you could have calculated this 1,000 years ago, and the word would always bring you to the very same 1948-47. 1,000 years from now, you calculate it, it'd be the same thing. It doesn't change. This stuff has already been established. It's like the Lychrel numbers candidates list and those 3,761 year bridges. They're already established, right? And I believe it was around the year 525 AD where the Romans made the change to the AD BC system to put it in harmony with the Hebrew calendar, the Lychrel number candidates list, and that 3,761 year bridge. So what I'm saying is that this point here where Mount Zion originates could have been seen 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years. It was always saying 1948-47. It has never changed. It's always said that. Just like the Lychrel numbers candidates list have always said 1947 plus 3,761 equals 5708. It has always said it was the sixth time that 3,761 year bridge applied to those candidate numbers. This stuff is as ancient as it gets. It's always been written, always been said. So to do what they did in 525 AD, if they had knowledge of the living word that I'm showing you right here, in 525 AD, they could have seen this 1948-47. If they had the word, they definitely saw it. They definitely saw it. And then the Lychrel number candidates list, if they had the information, they saw the same thing there. And then they brought them together with the way our time operates, right? Prior to that, there was no such thing as the AD and BC system. The Hebrew was still counting. So what would it have been at that time? 337.61 plus 525 would be what, 40? 61 and 25 would be 86. And 37, 4286. That calendar was going. The Anno Monday calendar was going at the time, was at 4286, right? But the AD calendar and the BC calendar didn't even exist. And when they came into existence, they were based around the Anno Monday, the Hebrew calendar, as well as the living word that I'm showing you here, and the Lychrel number candidates list, right? The only way that this could have all been formulated and changed to what it was changed to in 525 is having the awareness of the living word, what I'm showing you right here, having the awareness of the Lychrel number candidates list, and also having the awareness of when Abraham was conceived and born in the AM calendar, 1947, 1948, then you can put it all together to become what we have right now. The AD, BC, and AM calendars all operating on the 13761 philosophy, right? Where year one of all of the calendars equals year 3761 of all of the other calendars, and then it constantly forms the trinities of the 3 years: 1947, 1948, 5708, 1948, 5708, 5709, right? It's always 2 of one and 1 of the other. They all work and they all flow together, and these things are the only reason your time says what it says, right? The basis of, people, especially when you use the BC for before Christ and the AD for after death thing, and people get into it and they're like, well, this is restarted and it's based around before Jesus and after Jesus. But the reality is, it was 525 years from the start of the AD that we use, right? We're in 2025, so we're only 1,500 years into using the AD calendar system. We're not 2,025 years into using it. We're into using it for 1,500 years. For 525 years, there was no such thing. They weren't using it whatsoever. And its creation to say what it says in the way that it's used now is not based upon before Jesus and after Jesus, even though that's been applied to it. It's based on the timing of Abraham and the timing of the Hebrew calendar and on Monday. So this should expose a super high level link between the Hebrew and Rome, going all the way back to 525 AD, which is where the first year of using the AD system came into being. It's all put together in harmony, and it's all really based around the already established Hebrew time, and it's based around Abraham. And now here, when the modern nation of Israel was born, right, 1948, 47, birth, conception, same as Abraham in the AM calendar, 1947 conception, 1948 birth, and the whole return of Jewish people to Palestine and all of that, right? It was timed for that, right? In 525 AD, when that got set up, it was already set up that the powers that be, which is basically Rome, was going to orchestrate what occurred in 1947 and 1948 there in those biblical lands of Israel. That it was planned 1,500 years ago from right now, but it was planned, what, let's say 525, so it'd be 1423, 14,022 and 14,020 or 1,422, 1,423 years beforehand. It was already planned it was going to happen. And it went according to plan, according to time, and it was Rome and its branches that did it, right? The Anglican branches, it was all the Christian nations that established Israel, right? The Jewish people did not establish it, didn't have any ability to, but because they were in cahoots with the Christians and Rome and all of the Roman Empire, which the USA is, Russia is, Great Britain is, all of them were involved, right? And then, of course, the majority of the people that came there, they came out of the Pale of Settlement that is in Russia, what is now being called Ukraine, parts of it being called both Ukraine and Russia at the same time right now, right? The two big conflicts that are going on right now, Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia. These are the same areas and the same people. That's where the vast majority of them come from. They come from, they're Polish Jews, Ukrainian Jews, Russian Jews out of that Pale of Settlement area where the borders have moved around quite a bit. And Catherine the Great is why they were all in that area, right? And these ruling houses right now, lots of them come directly from Catherine the Great, right? The King Charles, that family is direct descendants from Catherine the Great. The King of the Netherlands, there's quite a few of them that are direct descendants from Catherine the Great, who was a German, who got onto the throne in Russia. The Romanovs come down off of her, right? The Romanovs would be cousins of the Windsors that we got going on right now. So all of these players that were involved, it's the same family, basically, that's been involved for a super long time, and it probably goes all the way back to 525 and beforehand, right? These same different royal branches and the control over them, right, from Rome, right? For a long time, the royals couldn't marry without the blessing of Rome. All of the different breeding, it was decided in Rome by the church who would breed with who would marry who, and how the different thrones in the different places were controlled, right? And then it spread all over the world through the Great Britain Empire, and it was directly, Great Britain in that house that was responsible for bringing the Jews back into Palestine and the whole deal that happened there. But it was all happened on time, right? This is the same thing here. We're being shown 1948, 1947, and the third wheel is 5708. In the Lychrel numbers candidates list, we're being shown 1947 and 5708, and the third wheel is 1948. Right. So now, I never plan on going super long, but there's always a ton to talk about, and of course I'm talking a lot here. Here, when the Z comes up again, which would be the first time where there now is a possibility to go into the 5 trees of paradise, which is the part of the story that's missing out there. And all the story out there, it says eternal Mount Zion, and eternal, 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 eternal. It's only potentially eternal, because the 5 trees of paradise can be gone into the 27th to 31st, and then the third script can begin, which is the character 32. It's a 101, 101. The character 33 is a cliffstone. That also, I believe that was a big part of why it was used within the Jesus story, because of it actually what it is within the word. Now 33, the 33rd character now is the most charged Scion character to have ever come into existence. In a long string of Scion characters come into existence. So this Zion, we could repeat it around and around, and it could go a long, 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 long time. And Mount Zion could rise, 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 rise to a super high level of charge, right? But anytime going into the 5 trees of paradise, which would continue to rise Mount Zion, complete that second script, 3 to 31, start the third script, right, which is now triple digits, right? 31 is 97, 79. 3 is 12, 21. 1 is 4 and 4. B is 8 and 8. That's singles. That's its own. That's the original script. That's the original, and that the real eternal state of everything, right? The reality is the rest of this is not eternal state. Nothing, this charged stuff is not eternal state, even though there's like an argument and basically a lie out there, which is why it's saying Mount Zion is eternal, 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 will last forever, it lasts forever, it'll last forever. But Jesus teaching about it within Thomas, the 5 trees of paradise, that is the counter mechanism to it. Once you complete this script, now you get into the triple digits, the third script, right? And the first one starts out as a vowel. That's the actual 5th vowel. There's only 4 vowels there's the two vowels in the very first script. There's 2 vowels in the second script, where the P is and the U is. And the 5th vowel is not until this 32nd character here. Then we go back to this chart. So no matter how high Mount Zion has risen, it can be brought back to the state of equality, which A, B to Z plus C try to do. And here at the Q, these last 3 days, right, the story of Jonah, a ton of stuff is within the stories, is actually comes from the word. That's what these 3 days are all about, right here. And there's a ton of it's in all the Jesus stories, right? But it's just not understood properly because people don't have the actual word, right? The Pharisees and the scribes have taken the keys to gnosis, to wisdom, and hidden them, not allowed anybody else to go into them, right? But here I'm showing you they used these keys that Jesus had and Jesus was giving out in his time, and they have existed all throughout time, right? As long as this has been going on, they've always existed. They could be read thousands of years ago, right? They always say the same thing. It doesn't change. All these numbers I'm showing you have always been seen exactly as they are because they existed the way that they are right now thousands of years ago. And into the future, thousands of years, they'll read and show the same thing, right? But it can all be adjusted back to that equality and have the opportunity to go back into the real, potentially eternal state, right? There has not been a real deal potential for an eternal state yet. The original neutrality, where things were all neutrons, singles and pairs. They were only as innocent as doves. They weren't yet as wise as serpents. So they didn't have what it takes to be eternal state at that time because they were lacking that wisdom. That's how they fell through the suicide that Jesus covers within the Gospel of Thomas, just like the 5 trees of paradise are covered within the Gospel of Thomas, right? That's the origin of the hydrogen. It's left and right. The waters, it's in Genesis 1, is hydrogen and helium. It's the 2 different waters, right? Earth did not exist, just like it says in Genesis 1. And then there was a war in heaven. The neutron side won the war in heaven. And then they began to create everything from helium-4 upwards. And the first earth element is after helium, which is lithium, right? It's a science text, right? There is absolutely no contradiction between science and religion at the real terms, right? When you get to the real deal stuff, science and religion are one and the same, right? It's about matter and charged matter and uncharged matter, right? But this whole deal can all be reversed after going through those 5 trees of paradise and into the 3rd script, right? It can also be controlled. How high do you want Mount Zion to rise before you go into it, right? This can be matched up so that just like at sea, when that 1200 occurred, it can be lined up so that the very first time when this 33rd character comes up, it comes to a state of equality. But here I jumped out to the Z again, which would be the first time. It would not, 33 would not line up to a state of equality if it jumped right into the 5 trees of paradise here and added 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. 32 wouldn't change the charge, but at 33 it would jump right back into Scion control right away here at the 33rd character. But it's very interesting here that again we have the 5748, 5749 deal, which is also showing at the Q, which is the absolutely last time that this repeating pattern can be solved and brought back to equality, the return to the here, which would be the first time that there's really an internal state, right? Zion, none of them, they're not eternal. The only as innocent as doves, neutrons that existed before all of the stuff that we call mass with electrons and protons in it existed, didn't have what it takes to be eternal. And only after a situation here where everything is neutral and you return to A and B, everything is healed and back in the heavens. There's no more divisions, none of the bullshit lies that is involved with all the stuff here, right? There's no chosen over anybody else, and there's even here, right? The Christian shit has division that's been applied to it and saying, well, some of you are going to go to heaven eternally, and some of you are going to eternally rot in hell. You're going to burn eternally, and that's all some bullshit. When it gets everything gets sorted out, everything will be returned to the heavens. There will be no divisions, right? All the shit that is divisions, right? I am not a divider. Oh man, who has made me a divider? Right? The liars have. Right? In terms of Jesus, right? Jesus is not teaching about any type of division shit, right? It's about everybody, right? So there are components from Rome in the church that are just as big a bullshit as the component from Israel, and we are the chosen ones, and we're gonna live with God in Zion forever. That's some fucking bullshit, lying ass bullshit. And then the distortion within Christianity saying that only us who have accepted Jesus are going to be in heaven, everybody else is going to burn eternally in hell. That is some distorted, lying ass bullshit too. The point of equality, and then the choice, and it takes two to make that choice, right? The C ion and Z ion side, like Jesus says within the Gospel of Thomas, right? When if the two make peace with each other in this one house, they will say to the mountain, move away, and the mountain will move away. Well, this is the deal, right? The whole thing will move away, right? The mountain is here within the word symbolically, right? There's two different mountains. There's a Mount Zion that's not eternal, and here is where it completely dies and it has no chance to come back except for into the next script. Mount Zion is not eternal, and then there is also the mountain that is all of the matter, the stuff that we call matter, that contains neutrons and electrons and protons, right? It will all move away, and all things, all people, everything will be restored back to the state of neutrality, neutrons and neutron pairs. And then after going through this complete hellish bullshit, all the scumbag shit that the more and less is, that Zion is, right? Then they will be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves, and capable for the first time of being in an actual eternal state. Innocent as doves, now neutral, not needing anything, completely whole, not incomplete like all the shit here is. Everything here is incomplete, vampiric, distorted. Right? It's a war zone, right? It'll be restored to the innocent as doves physical state, but then it will have the as wise as serpents mental state, and it will now be capable of being eternal forever. But Mount Zion is real. Mount Sion is real. Neither of them are eternal, have potential to actually be eternal. There are mechanisms that correct them, right? Mount Zion can rise and rise and rise and rise only if the 5 trees of paradise are not gone into. And that character, right, the character of the character is shown at Z. Instead of going into those 5 trees of paradise at the first time, made everything cyclical and went right back to C, trying to get that equality. And it should have, but it didn't, right? Not Washington, D.C., right? The main seat of Rome to this day, even though it's still big time. Rome is still seated big time in Washington, D.C., in London, in Moscow, and in tons of other places, still on all the thrones in all of the places, right? And that is what is behind Israel being reseated there at the time when the Word has always said it, right? It orchestrated it all to go together, right? But they're telling you a mix of truths about Zion, Mount Zion, but they're not telling you there's lies within all of the stuff too. It can be argued that it's a potential eternal state, but ignorance has to remain, and at least one has to continue to decide to make war and to live in poverty and filth and disgusting shit, right? You got to be retarded if you would want the earth and this fallen material and vampiric order to continue eternally, right? Yeah. Mistakes would have to keep being made for that argument of Mount Zion to be eternal, to have any legitimacy. But our potential is so much higher than that, right? Eventually we'll live up to our potential, which is the two making peace with each other in this one house and saying to the mountain, move away, and the mountain will move away. And then we will be able to have a true state of eternal being, not in the vampiric order, not in the more and less, everything in harmony, everything with everything it needs, right? The right physical state and also the right mental state, and along with that comes the right spiritual state, right? And that right spiritual state is that nothing is excluded. Everything is brothers and sisters. Nothing is excluded, which is the spiritual state that Jesus had, right, before it was distorted by Rome and the church into what is right now a mixture of truths and lies as well, right? Yes, it is true that through forgiveness of Jesus is a path to heaven, but it's not true that some are excluded from that, right? It takes the forgiveness out of the hands of Jesus and puts it into the hands of the individuals and say, you determine it. Whereas the other way, in Jesus' hands, it says, you are all forgiven and you are all going back to heaven, to the heavens. Have you found the beginning to be looking for the end? For there too it will be. You all began in the heavens and you will all go back to the heavens, right? But that's not something that can be sold and controlled, right? Which is what the church wound up becoming, right? They have to be able to, they have to have exclusion and shit in there, right? You have to follow us because this is the only path back, and do what we tell you and accept Jesus in this way, and And then they can demonize all the other people and say, hey, they're not Christians. They have no opportunity to go to heaven. They don't know about Jesus. We have to go and teach them. Then they can commit genocide and do the horrible, sickening things that they've done all over the world, right? Because when they add that division and that component and those lies into it, then all of a sudden the people who think they're following Jesus aren't, because they wouldn't do that if they were actually following Jesus. They would understand everybody's going back to heaven because that's where everybody come from, right? Instead, they're following the church and the lies that get sprinkled in with everything else, and that's how they were capable of completely genociding entire continents of people and doing all of the sickening stuff that they have done, right? But all of this stuff here is in black and white within the Word. This is where Mount Zion originates. This is the time. And while I'm showing it, when it's showing you the 2 years, 1948, 1947, which are the AD years, it's also showing you that third leg, which is the AM year, 5708. Right? 5708, and that's the same thing that the Lychrel numbers candidates list is showing, and that's how everything is tied together. And you can see literally, oops, I was going a little too far on copy and pasting it, because that's where I'm going to jump and put it back in. You can see literally how tied up the Roman and the Hebrew is when you look at both the living Word, where Mount Zion originates, and you look at the Lychrel numbers candidates list. And that 6th day, 1947, 5708. You look at the two calendars. Year 1 AM is 3761 BC. Year 1 BC is 3761 AM. Year 1 AD is 3761, right? All that put together by Rome in 525, and then all that is going on right now in both Ukraine and Israel, the two areas of the most sick shit in the entire world, was also orchestrated all by Rome, right? All by Rome. Nasty, nasty, nasty bullshit, right? Infecting the truths with their lies, which then results in all the murdering, sicko, nasty ass shit that they perpetuate, right? Because they are all about more and less and incompatible with the truths. They are who would love to see this filth and nastiness and poverty continue, and would love that their lie that it's eternal to be true, but it is not, and it will be countered, right? Because the Word of God and is beyond them. They can't stop it. They can only manipulate things about it, right? But it will all get reversed back. It will all go back to neutral. All things will be healed, and everybody will be included in it properly, right? Because that's where everything began. That's where everything will end. All of us will be there, and all of us will be eternal. And everything here that says anything otherwise besides that is their fucking lying asses, which is both of them, right? The Hebrew lying ass motherfuckers and the Christian lying ass motherfuckers, the Romans.